the highway district was created by a vote of the people to make more efficient and to make our government work for the benefit of its citizens.
We not only had virtually no planning for streets and highways, we also had insufficient money to build them and maintain them until the highway district was created in 1972. It was considered to be controversial at the time. Yes.
Looking back on it, I'm glad I was there. I'm sorry I opposed it, but at the same time, I think the opposition was the right thing to do at that time.
It's an asset to the citizens of Ada County, way more than it is not. The history of where our roads came from gives one an appreciation of what the evolution has been and why is it that we are where we are today.
Susan Stacy is a consulting historian and has researched the creation of the Ada County Highway District, also known as ACHD, located in Ada County, Idaho. But her knowledge of local history goes to the beginning of the county's largest city, Boise, which became the state capital.
The first folks came here in 1863, and they created the first plat for Boise City.
Roads were critical from the start.
We today have we have these streets, these roads that are still part of the community.
Over time, Boise was joined by other cities in the Treasure Valley.
When new communities were built, communities like Meridian or Eagle or Cuna, there needed to be ways to get from between those cities. So Fairview Avenue, for example, was the way to get to Meridian. In 1910, it was paved, and it was really, really narrow at the time. So that's how one thing leads to another. The growth of population, the growth of houses, the growth of business centers, the growth of schools. History marches on.
Boise-born architect Charles Hummel saw history in the making. After attending college in the East, he returned to Boise in 1953 and was part of a major road management change in Ada County.
Basically, it was a very slow-growing city right at that particular time, but everybody knew that it had the potential to become a much larger city.
Hummel became a member of the Ada County Planning and Zoning Commission and the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission. In those days, each city in Ada County had responsibility over the streets. Roads in the county were managed by the county government, so there were several road departments. And there was a funding problem.
Thanks to the way in which the state gasoline tax revenue was distributed, most of that for streets went to the county rather than to the towns.
The result was the cities did not have enough funds to take care of their roads.
For instance, the county was building and improving roads way out in the middle of nowhere, and in the meantime, the streets and roads in the towns were going to pieces.
Chuck holes, potholes, road holes. There's probably a huge number of synonyms for pothole. What surprised me was how many pothole pictures we found. This is just a few of, there must have been 150 different negatives to choose from about Boise City's potholes. I think potholes, the incredible, wonderful potholes that we have pictures of, are just the symbol of what this inequitable road finance system, I think it just symbolizes how bad that was. There was a lot of humor sometimes associated with these potholes, but you know, you look at these pictures and you do wonder what was up with the city's public works road division.
Another issue was that Ada County levied property taxes on the residents of each city, taxes that went toward the county roads.
Ada County, the county jurisdiction supposedly over only the unincorporated area of the county, was collecting taxes from the city residents. But then it was spending all of that money on the county roads and none of it on the city roads. And so you had people observing at the time that here we are in the city where all the traffic is, and we're driving from one pothole to the next. But if you go outside the city limits into the county, the streets were paved with gold. They were paved.
All the while, cities also levied property taxes for streets and roads to spend inside city limits. The result was that city residents were getting double taxed.
And they weren't really getting a very equitable distribution in how that money was spent. So that made a lot of people think about, okay, what can we do about this?
That's when the idea of a county-wide highway district was voiced. Stacy found that while tax and service equity were the most powerful drivers behind the effort, the citizens of Ada County were also open to the idea of county-wide planning and county-wide consolidation of services. The first step was to go to the Idaho legislature.
As a citizen and as a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the county and of the city, I was very supportive of it and wrote letters and helped to lobby the legislature to get the enabling legislation passed.
The legislation paved the way for a county-wide highway district in Ada County. The bill said that counties of more than 75,000 people may hold an election on whether or not to set up such a district. If approved, the district would do all street and road work, acquire all funds for such work, and remove responsibility from the city and county road departments. The Idaho Transportation Department still had jurisdiction over state roads.
Of course, it had widespread public support because everyone realized that we were going nowhere with regard to street planning and improvements unless the situation was changed. And principally because the distribution of highway money was so unfair under the state distribution formula. So putting the entire county and all of its towns into one street and highway district was the solution, and still is today.
However, there was opposition to the idea from some cities in Ada County, and the Boise City Council was very vocal. Dick Erdley was on the Boise City Council at that time. He later became mayor of Boise.
Every city had its own street department, and the county had a highway department. We all had separate departments, and the roads were in bad shape.
Erdley was not ready to give up Boise City's power over its streets, even though other proposals to fix the streets never came to fruition.
The entire opposition was based upon the way the bill was written and concerns that we would lose control over the streets, and in losing control over the streets, lose control of planning.
The mayors and many of the city council people were advocating against it. And I think they foresaw that this would just make running a city that much more complicated. They were probably right. I would say they were probably right, but they were outvoted.
ACHD officially went into business January 1st, 1972.
There wasn't a whole lot of whimpering, there wasn't a whole lot of arguing. We did what the law said and what the people had voted. And that was to disband the city street operation and turn it over to a new district. And that included them taking our city equipment and most of our manpower too.
Boise City decided to try and make it work, even though there were some battles. And eventually the condition of the roads got better in the city and the potholes were fixed.
Overall, the biggest change that I think anybody saw in the next few years was the improvement in the roads, because the highway district was able to coordinate everything better. There was more money in the pot, so to speak, and they were able to do a major job of bringing the roads up to standard in Boise, and as well as keeping the county roads decent. They didn't perform miracles overnight. It took years to bring everything up to snuff, but they finally got there.
Part of the problem was that the original streets in many places were substandard in terms of their construction. And that, of course, was one of the reasons why there were so many potholes. But gradually the potholes disappeared. You don't hear about potholes very much anymore. And Boise and the other towns in the county are fortunate that way, because I think that we really do better with regard to that than many other places where I've been and seen horrendous deterioration in the streets.
But there was more to the new highway district than just fixing potholes.
A number of really important things have been added to ACHD's list of duties. The traffic control, the lighting system that controls the traffic, for one thing, which is now in Ada County, the ACHD responsibility, that's a terrific improvement and getting better all the time. And there really isn't any way that can be done in a completely urbanized area except by one entity. The district has realized that building more roads isn't necessarily the entire answer either, that it also makes sense to provide systems where there would be some kind of public transportation. So a commuter ride is an early shot at getting a transit system that makes some sense.
Looking back decades later, Hummel, who was also one of the founders of Idaho Smart Growth, still believes creating a county-wide highway district was the right thing to do.
I'm very pleased with the way the district is being operated now. I realize that there are tensions sometimes between the district and the city and the county government, but those things over time get worked out. The district has been a leader in comprehensive planning, and I think that's a signal that the district, has in itself is a leader in local government. So I'm very happy with that.
Erdley, who was originally opposed to the creation of ACHD, now feels differently.
I can say it's one of maybe the only time, but at least the first time, and maybe the only time that I ever was adamantly opposed to something as a member of the city council. And a few years later, decided I was completely wrong, and I'm happy to admit it today. I think that we had legitimate concerns, but those concerns were met in the next few years. And overall, I think the Highway District has done a good job in what they're charged with doing, and that's building and maintaining the streets in the county. And I think they've done a good job, better than we could have done as a city and as a county as separate entities.
In the summer of 2007, the independent Urban Land Institute said ACHD is the best way to deliver service and that it should continue with minimum change. ACHD was the first and is currently the only countywide highway district in Idaho. Its unique beginning is only one chapter in this unusual road department's history, which continues to unfold.
The world is changing. Everybody's interest in bicycling and transit and less expensive ways to get around is going to create another revolution in technology and in how we use our roads. So that remains to be seen, but at least the county will be one unit.